What is going on, guys? Todd Fossey here, Tactical Jam Session. I hope that you guys are all doing well. I've been a little bit under the weather this last week, and I've got be sipping on a little bit of hot tea here just to help me get through the day. But we have, I think, a really special episode for you tonight and a really special guest, and I can't wait to really get into it with him. This is a guy who knows more about winning in competition and winning in life than most people do. And so we're going to be kind of mixing that up tonight, winning in competition and winning in life, and how those things go together. Um, there's so much that I've learned from this guest tonight that I can't wait to share with you guys. Hopefully, over time, we can have him on periodically from time to time just to kind of extract some of the nectar that I've learned from him over the years that I can share with all of you, because I think, one, it will make you a better person, and two, it will make you a better practitioner, and three, it will help keep you safer. Um, his name is Greg Nelson, and his resume is too expansive for us to dive deep into tonight, but I want to touch on what some of the highlights are for you to take into consideration before we get into our conversation tonight. Greg has coached many world and American champions in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, gymnastics. He's a coach for U.S. Special Forces, and of course, MMA. Greg has coached now 4 UFC world champions, including the likes of Brock Lesnar, Sean Shirk, Dave Manet, and then most recently, just 1 week ago today, Rose Namajunas, UFC 261. We'll be talking about that tonight a lot. And Greg is also a 2-time cancer survivor, probably his biggest accomplishment to date. And then I'm blessed to say that Greg is also my coach, my friend, and my mentor. With no further ado, Greg, welcome to the show. So great to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here. You were under weather. I'm still on the clouds from last weekend. So.
Oh, congratulations, man. Like, we haven't really had a chance to spend any time together because I was traveling and I've been a little bit sick. We haven't had a chance to get together face to face to catch up. But oh my gosh, man, what an absolutely I literally, I'm not just saying this, I have goosebumps right now just having my mind flash back to last Saturday night. I want to hear all about it. We're going to dive into this a little bit, okay? Because oh man, there's so much in this. But before we get into it, I want to play a clip from last Saturday night, UFC 261, and that will launch us into the rest of our conversation. So
I got goosebumps now.
wow. What an iconic moment. Iconic moment not only to me anyway, from my point of view, an iconic moment not only in UFC and MMA history, martial arts history, but I also think that was a moment that transcended even the sport. I think it transcended sports. I think Rose has something going on that really, really transcends all of this, and she has something much deeper going on, don't you think?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, she's a true martial artist for one, but more than that, she's just a totally authentic person, purely through and through. Says what's on her mind. She speaks what's on her heart. She's not afraid to give her insecurities out there because she's real. Because everybody has them, but she's willing to talk about them. So it's above and beyond just fighting for sure.
I think that's what's one of the things there's so many things that are so inspiring about Rose, but I think that's probably the biggest one, that we can have flaws, we can have insecurities as all human beings do, and we can still be successful and happy and have a fulfilling life, even at an extremely high level. Right. 100%. And I think that just gives so many other people permission, to do the same. And I know in your own personal story is very similar. And it's really great to see the kind of people that she's surrounding herself as well. And I want to get into that, but I know this next question I'm going to ask isn't a fair question, Greg, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You've now coached 4 UFC world champions. How does this one stack up against the others and so many other iconic championships? How does this one stack up?
This is a pretty special in the fact that, one, she was such an going in there as an underdog. The second time she was an underdog going in there, taking the crown from the current queen that no one thought could be beaten. She did that with Joanna twice, and now she's done it with Weili. So, man, going in there and just knowing who she is as a person and how hard she's worked and what she goes through, and just seeing her grow up as a teenager all the way up to now, man, it is, even watching that right now, I just get goosebumps because it's just it's so awesome to me.
I don't think there was probably a dry eye in in the arena, and there probably wasn't a dry eye watching that. I think everyone was so moved and misty. I know Joe Rogan even started to get a little bit choked up right there in the post-fight interview. Why don't we back up a little bit? You talked about, having worked with Rose since she was a teenager. She's 28 years old now. Why don't you take us through a little bit about your history with Rose and Rose's history with the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy?
Yes, they first came, both Pat and Rose first came when Rose was just starting to get into fighting. She was already into doing Taekwondo, and she was an athlete growing up, and she was training in Milwaukee with Duke Rufus, and they ended up coming here. Pat was working with Brock, and so that's kind of how it all culminated. And then, she started with the jiu-jitsu, and just like everyone else, we just bring them into the fold. And that's one of the things that they really liked about the academy, is that they're just one of the people in the academy. All right. Yeah. And that's, we look at what they got. And the other thing too is, right away, even before any fights are going on, you could see that she had a unique gift. Like I've said it before, like a chameleon. She sees a technique and she's able to just become the technique very fast, very fast. She just sees stuff. And I could see that at the beginning. And if you heard Pat there, said, "I've been telling you this forever. You are the best. I've told you this from the beginning." And it's true. She had something that you could see from the very get-go many, many years ago.
Yeah. You and I have talked about this, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but I've had the privilege to work with her a little bit as well on the firearm side of things, and some cognitive and training around, focus as well. And she's an imitative learner, and it's absolutely uncanny how fast she learns. She can see it. She'll ask some questions about it. So you see her internalizing it, and boom. And then the next thing that was so staggering about her is, like, literally she has no sense of superiority over you at all. She has no overblown sense of ego. She sincerely wants to, and I've been in class with you at the same time. She's the same way. She sincerely wants to learn and internalize everything that she's doing. There are 3 people that I've worked with out of all the thousands of people and amazing people that I've taught that are the most coachable. And that would be Rose, yourself, and Nat McIntyre. 3 most teachable people I've ever worked with. And I just think that speaks volumes about her. Would you care to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. When you're working with Rose, she is like a total beginner in the way she looks at things. She'll ask a question, and we'll go over things, and then she'll just get after it. And then every once in a while, she'll ask a question about a detail, and then she'll get after it. There's not a lot of, well, what about this? What if that? What if over there? This and that. I got this. Nothing. It's just like, if you told her to do a technique and then walked away and said, "Just keep doing it, I'll be back in a second," and then come back like an hour and a half later, she'd still be doing it because you told her to. And she knows that repetition is so important. And then she asks, like I said, these little, I mean, questions that just anchor things. And they're very poignant because it'll be like, well, what if I move my hip like this, would this be okay? I mean, something so subtle, but because she knows her body so well and how she's going to move, those questions are just, very, very perfect at the right time. But she is such a, and like I said, going into a regular class, jujitsu class, she'll pair up with anybody. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
She
matter.
just wants to be a student of the game, student of whatever, because, and she'll always be like, okay, okay. That's it. Not like, well, what if, because I did this before. Never.
Absolutely. And I think, I think it's probably safe to say that she kind of enjoys being one of the class. I think she likes that. She likes being in there and feeling as though she's a student just like everybody else is a student. I think that takes a lot of pressure off of her. I think that she understands that it helps deepen her learning, and you can tell she is present every single moment, whether that be in a class for the public or whether when you're private training with her. And I've spent, time observing she and Pat training together, as well as the time that I've spent. She is present and engaged in every single moment. There's never a moment that I've ever observed her where she's checked out or tuned out.
No, she's so into it. And like I always say, like Guru Dan is like a kindergartner. She's like that. She sees
Yes.
something like it's out of the eyes of a person who's never seen it before. And then she'd be like, oh, and then just get going. And the other thing too is she's an introvert. She doesn't like the fanfare. I mean, just like after the fight, after this huge giant fight, we went back and we went to the hotel room and just hung out.
Yeah.
And then she goes, oh, and Pat goes, well, I suppose we better go down in the lobby for a little bit and get some pictures taken. She goes, okay, we'll do that. And so she went down. We were down there for about maybe 20 minutes. Then she's like, okay, let's go back up. Then right back up. And I mean, she's just a real person. And, at their house, they know all their neighbors. They just talk to their neighbors, hang out with their neighbors. She's just a person, a real person.
Yeah, that's not an act. For those of you who are watching this, to know that that's not an act. She is the same authentic person when she's with you in private, when she's training in private, when she's in front of the cameras and the bright lights and the biggest stadiums and arenas, in all fancy interviews. She's exactly the same person at all times, and it's really, I think that's what's one of the things that's so inspiring about her. Speaking of training right now, one of the things I've been really curious about is let's just take a look at Rose's team for a second here, right? So we've got Trevor Whitman. Trevor won.
Actually, this one right here.
Yeah.
That one, the girl and the guy in the middle. That's Scott Shilson.
Oh, that's not Trevor.
No, that's not Trevor. That's Shilson. But he was. Now think about this. That the girl right there is one of the best female wrestlers in the country at her weight. That was Gunner, my son's training partner, since they're 7 years old. And so
that's what this picture is.
Yeah. So she wanted to come in and wrestle with the girls, with the college team and with the girls to learn more about wrestling.
Wow. So bad picture on my part. That picture so small. I thought it looked a lot like Trevor in that picture. So let's talk about the team. So we've got Trevor Whitman, who won 2 titles last Saturday night alone, back to back, right?
Yes.
Rose and Kamaru Usman, back-to-back titles. So powerhouse all by himself just in that one night. Then you've got yourself. You've coached multiple UFC world champions and all world champions in multiple disciplines. Pat Barry himself, who's an absolute genius, right? And obviously is also Rose's, closest person in her life and her fiance. And then Rose herself. And as well as her training partners and everybody else who's involved as support staff. That's an amazing amount of experience and knowledge happening on one team. My question is, how do you navigate that? How do you negotiate that? And how do you set boundaries? And how does that work?
I think for us, it's a very, obviously it's a very symbiotic relationship. We all work with one another. But for me, I allow Trevor, because he's like a striking wizard. That's his baby. And then Pat is also a striking wizard, but he's more coming from the kickboxing, putting things together in that route, right? Whereas Trevor Whitman's, just a boxing and movement and so creative. That's another guy that's like just a creative genius with the stuff that he puts together. He makes up the drills that he puts together. And so I just go there and I watch them do their thing. I don't really even say a word. Right. And then when it comes down to grappling, wrestling.
Greg, I want to point something out really quick.
Yes.
I want the people watching, I want to make a note of something that you won't make a note of. Okay. Greg won't say this about himself, but Greg is also a striking wizard. He's an Ajahn in Muay Thai, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff and an extreme amount of creativity. So I want people to make note of how Greg is recognizing other talent and understanding where correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, understanding your place on the team and what's going to be best for Rose and best for the team in the long run, not necessarily what's just going to be best for you. Is that correct?
100%. I mean, that's ultimately why we're all there for, is to get Rose to be the best that she can possibly be. And she has a great relationship with Trevor and how he coaches. And not only that, but also his positive mentorship. He's like, this guy's like a constant 100% positive reinforcement about everything. Just really a great guy. And again, a boxing and striking wizard, not only just with strikes, but footwork and angling and how we're going to dissect this and do this. And then you add that with Pat, who now brings in elements of the kicks and who knows Rose from the very get-go all on up. So knows exactly mentally how she's thinking when she comes in, how she's feeling that day, what emotional bumps we got to get around. So he knows all that. And so that gets done. And then I come in and I really break down, the grappling aspect of things, wrestling, when they get clinched up, when we get against the cage. And then another guy that's involved really heavily is Chico Camus, who fought UFC as a 125-pounder and is a great strike. And is smaller. He fought at 125, so he can be down there, but he's also a really good mind and creative and super energetic. And I think that's a big thing, is the energy. Everybody has this really positive energy, and we all absolutely care for each other and Rose. So this team is like a very close team. And I've known everyone there for a long time, Pat especially, Trevor since he's been involved with the UFC, and Rose, and then Chico in the last few years when Rose was starting to come up.
Yeah. Wow. Synergy really excites me when I hear of teams getting together and working synergetically at such a high level where egos aren't getting involved and people don't feel like they're getting toes stepped on, where people really have, the whole team has one clear goal and one clear focus in mind. So, every cell and every molecule and every subatomic particle and every piece of experience and every emotion and thought that everybody brings to the table is all working toward one specific thing. So that way there isn't all this, all this confusion and dissonance, and you could just feel how everything is all flowing together into that one specific point. I mean, that's got to be that has to be, knowing how the egos in this industry and in this business, that has to be an extremely rare experience.
I know about us and how we get along and how we trust one another 100%. So obviously Rose will come to the academy for a month and she'll go back to Colorado and work with Trevor and then back and forth. Then I'll go out there and then they'll come back again. So it's a constant back and forth. And everybody is, like you said, we're on one plane, and that's to get Rose, to be the best that she can be in every aspect of the fight game. And, so that she can just grow as a person and just be you know, that wonder that she is. Man, when she is on, man, unstoppable, unstoppable.
Let's shift gears a little bit, but it's not completely shifting out of this conversation. I think it ties into it well. It's an important topic, I think, about outliers and about winners in life and winners in competition, winners in business, winners of all kinds. That let's talk about. I'd like to talk about how winners do things that other people don't do. You've worked with a lot of winners over your life, and you're a winner yourself. But let's just let's get more specific about the winners that maybe are performing at the highest possible level, extreme elite performers. Have you observed specific reoccurring themes through, and common denominators throughout working with high level performers, Greg? Are there things that really crystallize and come to mind when you think about people like that?
Well, without a doubt, they are absolutely 100% internally driven.
Mm.
It's like you don't have to, hey, you remember you got to be there at XYZ. You don't have to remind them. You don't have to do. They're going to be there because they have a something that's pulling them. Not you don't have to push them. They're being pulled into training. They're being pulled into training. They're doing stuff above and beyond because they know that what they need to do. And I think the other thing is they are absolutely 100% in tune with how important fundamental skill is. They will work the most basic skills over and over and over for years and years and years. And so they always have that now to fall back on if they need to, because they have so many other things they can go, but they have this base that's so solid and that they have no problem working over and over and over. And I can say this from, I remember, let's go all the way back to Dave Monet. He used to live in my gym, and I'd forget something. I'd go there at 11:30 at night. He'd be hanging on the heavy bag doing some kind of guard drill at 11:30 at night. I go, oh, hey, Dave, what's going on? Oh, just working some guard stuff. Okay. Bam. Never had a, worry. Then came Sean Shirk, and people are like, wow, everybody knew he's going to do a double leg and this and that, but he couldn't stop it. And I said, yeah, because what he did is he'd been doing that, his takedown since he's 5 years old. So then he figured out, okay, I have to blend it with my striking. And so 2 to 3 times a week for an hour, each one of those days, probably doing 200, 250 takedowns in that time, 2 to 3 times a week, year round for 10 years. He did roughly this. There may have been, I remember at first there's 5 combinations that kind of came up to 10 combinations and maybe 20 combinations that only because he added fakes in there. It was the same thing. That's how he got so smooth at doing that. And he never worried about, oh, I got to learn something new. I got to learn something new. No, all he had to do is get better and better and better. Brock was the same way. He wanted to make sure he knew where his lane was. And so I don't want to do anything crazy. I'm going to do what I can do. I'm going to do it over and over. And stickler for being on time. This is what we're going to do. When we're going to do it, let's get it done. And whatever was going to be done was done. There was no excuses, right? And then come the rows, same thing. Have one question. Here's what we're going to do. Or she'd go, okay, can we work XYZ? Yep. Which one do you want to work first? X. Okay. And we might get to X.
Yeah.
Because she's totally fine with that. Because she knows that over time, it's all going to come into play. It's all going to come into play. And so they have this common denominator that they are totally fine with just working simple things over and over and over. And then they pressure test it, and then they come back, and then they're sparring, and then they come back, and then they refine. No problems.
Yeah. Sounds like a great metaphor for life too, for people who aren't into martial arts or MMA. Right? Just how are we successful in life? Fighting and MMA is almost the perfect metaphor for life, don't you think?
Yeah, because you have so many different elements that you got to deal with, and it's all about dealing with one thing, whichever your one thing may be. But now you're coming from it from a variety of different venues. You come in, like I would say, obviously MMA. We have to be a stand-up person. We have to be a takedown person. We have to be a clinch person. We have to be able to fight off and on the cage. We have to be able to fight on the ground, offensively, defensively. And then how do we blend them all together? And then mentally, how do we keep
Mm.
them, keep ourselves motivated and in the game and confident and believe that we can go out there and do what we're going to do. So it's an entire being thing. Like anything that you want to be great at, you better get your entire being into it.
And overcome your own doubts, you know?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, we're talking about UFC 261 here, you know, and it's hard to find a more public example of someone who was using her skills mentally to overcome some of her own doubts that she's been very public about. Obviously now it's become famous, right? Her mantra, I'm the best, I'm the best. That's going to be iconic all throughout history now. I'm curious about, I mean, I know that she's used that mantra in the past, but that night we saw her walking out through the tunnel out into the arena, and she was using that mantra, right? How soon did that mantra start last Saturday?
Well, I mean, we were doing our pre-fight workout in the day, in the afternoon, and we were starting to get honed in physically and mentally and emotionally with that. And every time, and Trevor was really talking about this to her about every time any kind of a doubt creeps in, you just go right back to I am the best. I am the best. You don't let anything come in there. And I was always a big proponent to having those affirmations, because when you have negative things trying to bombard you, man, you got to fill them up. You got to get them out of there. You got to put something else in their place.
That's
And we
right.
always say it's the ants, right? The automatic negative thoughts. You don't have automatic positive thoughts.
That's right.
You have automatic negative thoughts, and so you got to fill them up. When they come in, you got to smash those ants with the positive thoughts, and so that's a huge thing. And so that was, started during the day, and obviously it's been the whole camp, because she has a certain affirmations that she has about her confidence and conditioning and her belief and that she's the best, and obviously we saw that. So going out there in the back room too, warming up, she was saying it. I'm the best. I'm the best. I'm the best. Anytime, she wasn't going to allow any negative thoughts to come in. She was just invading it with that affirmation that she's the best. She's the best. Walking out to the cage, I'm the best. I'm the best. In the cage, I'm the best. I'm the best. Wasn't going to allow anything to take or derail that.
And even after,
Yes,
even
100%.
after she had the belt put on her waist, she still was affirming herself because she knows how powerful that kind of positive, that positive affirmation is, right?
100%.
Um, you have to you have to celebrate your victories in the same way that you
Yeah.
overcome your obstacles, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever the case may be. Wow. So there's so many lessons in this. Let's talk about cross training a little bit. Um, interesting camp with cross training, right?
Mhm.
So Pat and Rose approached me at Minnesota Martial Arts Academy about wanting to incorporate some firearms training as cross training into their camp, which I thought was really, really interesting. And upon some deeper conversation with Rose, I came to find out, like, she wanted to use it as cross training in camp, but she was also very, very serious about understanding the firearm as a legitimate means of personal protection for herself. She took that very, very seriously. Then Pat made it pretty clear to me that he wanted to use this also not just as for firearms training, for cross training, but he also asked me if I would find a way to incorporate this into exercises around focus and concentration, and in a way that can mix things up and keep it light at the same time. So that was obviously really enlightening to see that they were willing to do that and want to do that, and she was super into it and focused. But that wasn't the only cross training that she did during that camp. She also spent a fair amount of time in FMA with you, Filipino martial arts with you, maybe for similar reasons. Would you mind expanding on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, she had done, Kali and weaponry in the past, and really enjoyed it. But sometimes what happens, especially in a fight camp, it's just like so focused on just the fight, that your brain never gets a break.
Yeah.
And it can wear you down. And you have to think about, okay, what am I going to do next? So we started to take things that I've been doing forever that I apply in, the combat arts constantly, because it's how you think about things. We started doing Filipino hubad, which is a sensitivity drill and a field drill and a reaction reflex drill with your hands, putting some elements of Wing Chun in there as well. And then doing a lot of Filipino weaponry, doing sombrado, which is like a question and answer. I swing a stick at you, you answer it. And what that does is all of a sudden you start to be able to pick out and become very good with line familiarization. You see a weapon coming over here, you block it. You see another one coming over here, you're blocking it. Your eyes are just picking up all these things while your body is feeling things. And so what happens once you clinch up, it's all feel and sensitivity. You don't have to see anything anymore. And having that ability to just start to reflexively react once you touch another person is huge. We already do tons of striking and tie pads and focus mitts and sparring and grappling and wrestling and hardcore training, that now the weaponry and the Filipino martial arts with the hubad is taking your brain to another level. Taking your brain to another level. And that was the big thing. And in fact, I remember it was either Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday of last week before the fight. We did 55 minutes straight of hubad, just all these drills, 55 minutes nonstop. And people are like, well, how's that going to help you? And I go, well, you ever see a boxer do this in the ring? Come here, get over here.
Right.
No, you don't see that. But you think about, I made this reference, like imagine now a speed bag had the ability to change reactions, to grab at you, to move, to give you different levels of pressure, to move around and continually demand you to respond, react, and to feel when it's changing. Not when you direct it, but when things are changing. Now imagine doing that, and that's kind of what hubad is. It's like another extension of a speed bag with all those other elements involved. So you're firing so many parts of your body when you're doing it. And I found personally that it comes out in all sorts of training, from wrestling to jiu-jitsu on the ground. Man, feel sensitivity. It's a mindset.
You've even brought that up when we've been working some weapons-based stuff together with the handgun. You've even brought that up and shown me some videos and shown the cross application, shown the cross application there in so many ways. I think it's great for the mind. It's almost like this active meditation. It's like an active meditation. So it gives the mind a break, but it also stimulates it in all the right ways. It stimulates it in all the right ways at the same time. It's sort of like this kind of like active recovery mentally and emotionally and physically too, for that matter, right? And she seems to really love it.
Yeah.
I see her really engaged with it. I know she really got into the firearm stuff, especially the weapons-based combatives. Like we'd be scrapping it up and she'd be like, oh, this is so fun.
Yeah.
This is so fun. She would just resonate with it. And talking about common denominators, I was teaching her a lot of stuff that that we've worked with distance management with the firearm, right? And Pat was watching, and then Pat comes in the octagon, and he's just buzzing. He's like, this is what he is, right? He's like, this is almost exactly what some of the stuff that I teach when it comes to striking, like. And we just mixed it up right away and started taking a look at what all the common denominators. He's like, oh, this and this for me is that and that for you. And he's just finding all these common denominators. And I mean, here's a guy who's been fighting professionally his whole life and been around fighting professionally his whole life, still finding these common little nuggets in something new. And he's just like so electrified and alive with it. And then Rose jumps in. She's like, yeah, this and that. And it's so fun and exciting. We get people together that are so passionate about finding these common elements among multiple disciplines. And I know that that's something that you spend a lot of time. Well, I mean, that's just something that comes obvious for you.
Yeah. I mean, that's my whole thing is I try to find all the common denominators I can from all these different arts and see where they blend together, what areas are specific for that one little area of fighting, but one in that same, maybe do a couple different moves here or there, and you'll see, man, it's just like this from this art. It's just like this from this sport. It's just like this. A little bit of a modification. It's almost exactly the same. If you were to look at my notes, it would be like, okay, I'm doing something from Penchak Silat or like wrestling. Trying to write wrestling notes or sensitivity based notes is really difficult. So I'm like 3/4 Nelson, but step over into inside trip, similar to Silat, and it just got choo choo choo. It's just like I have all these references that I can look at and piece together like puzzle pieces. Don't have to write anything. And so for me, I've always looked at not only the technical aspect of all these martial arts, but what is the, how are you doing it? What are you doing it for? What's the emotional and mental connection that you're giving to this technique? And for me, since the get-go of my martial arts, since I first started, it's always been about fighting. I want to be a better fighter. That's why I started martial arts. That's why I do it now. But at the same time, I found that you're also finding ways that you're going to allow yourself to be, like you said, a moving meditation, that you're going to be able to have active recovery, but at the same time, you're still developing these skills that you will eventually blend with something else. And I don't see it any different. I don't see like, oh, we're doing this martial art now and this martial art now and this. And I even talk about that with gymnastics and wrestling and all that. When I was in high school, there's an all-American gymnast and it's wrestling and doing all this stuff and doing martial arts. To me, it was all training. That's all I looked at it. It was training. Gymnastics is helping this. Wrestling's going to be better for that. Then martial arts does this, and it all blends together. And even my gymnastics coach, who I thought was kind of a Renaissance man at that point, he would write these questions for me. How do you get prepared for gymnastics? How do you get prepared for wrestling? Is it different? What do you have to do different? And he'd have me answer all these questions. And I started doing that with all the martial arts that I do. What's the similarities? What am I getting ready for this? How would I prepare? And that's just how my brain has just kind of went for all these years. I don't even think about it.
No, you don't. So for people who are watching at home, just to give you a little bit of insight on this, again, something that Greg won't talk about, or maybe he just takes it for granted so much that he doesn't think about it. But before class, Greg has these big whiteboards up at the academy, and he'll go up to class and he'll write things on the board, but it's not always as obvious and clear cut as you think. Sometimes it's this really wild matrix, right? Where Greg's drawing lines and connections about what connects with what and how, and then maybe it comes from a completely different martial art. He might find something in a different martial art that applies specifically to what you're doing. And it's a really great experience to be able to sit back, have that sort of a cognitive observation visually, and then be able to turn it into, excuse me, be able to turn that into real world application. You get a little bit of a glimpse into what happens in the mind of Greg Nelson and get to actually have a real world experience for what that's like. Let's talk about purpose a little bit. It's pretty obvious that Rose has a higher sense of purpose for what she's doing and why she's doing it.
Yes, for sure.
She's becoming more public about it now. Why does Rose fight? What is it that what that motivates Rose to continue to do this at such a high level? What is it that motivates Rose to continue to want to be and shoulder the pressure of becoming a champion? It permeates through everything that she says and everything that she does. And she said it even post-fight several times. I've heard in post-fight interviews. She's in this to give back. That's what her motivation is. Her motivation isn't for herself. She understands she has to be self-sustainable and she deserves to be rewarded for her work. But she sees this as a seed to give back. Is this another, you talked about being internally motivated, right?
Mm-hmm.
One, I'd like you to talk about what your observations have been with Rose, with her purpose that's bigger than herself and her internal motivation. But what are some of the other internal motivations that you've observed with other high level performers and a higher sense of purpose over the years?
Yeah, for Rose, she's kind of driven by this desire to want to continue to help people. She wants to make these earth ships for people for sustainable housing. She's really into the environment. I mean, they went to Indonesia to make these things and literally lived with the people in tents and these islands. And so she's totally into that aspect of things. And she kind of lives that way. They garden, they grow their own food. When we're over there, we're eating all really clean food, very simple food. She cooks her own food. She just, everything's about being somewhat self-sustainable, right? And then that gives them also an ability to then share that skill with people that might need it. So everything is about kind of this goal of giving back. And that's a huge thing. And it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. They don't want to have this big, they don't need all these things. They just have their nice, simple house. They have their nice camper because they don't like to fly a lot. They want to drive places, and they can bring their dogs with them. They can be more of a unit instead of having to be separate and going here and there. So everything's about being together, being who they are, being authentic, and then, giving back when they can give back. And it's always like that. And I'll tell you this is a really funny story. It's like everybody involved in this camp is kind of like that. Like Gaethje, Justin Gaethje, this he's a tough dude. We were all outside walking. We just went outside, and there's like this riverfront by where we're at, and we're hanging out. And this girl came, and she was all dressed in like her, I don't know where she was from, Jamaica or something, but she had very colorful clothes on. She was like a teenager, and her mom was there, and her brother. And so Gaethje went over there and thought that maybe she wanted some pictures because, there's Kamaru Usman. She didn't know who any of these people were. But what happened was she was supposed to meet a photographer there to get these pictures taken. So she got all dressed up and all this clothes, and the dude didn't show up. So what does Gaethje do? He's going, well, we'll do the pictures. So you had a photographer there, and then Trevor Whitman's all in there. He's got all his cameras and stuff. And so he goes over there, and he takes off with this other cameraman. It was so funny. She asked him, "Are you a professional cameraman?" He goes, "Well, no, but this camera's really professional." And he was so, his heart was 100% in it. So he got the other photographer that was an actual real photographer, and they went off to the place they were supposed to do it. And they were there for like an hour taking pictures, exchanged emails. They did it for nothing. And that's who he is. He goes, well, what are you going to do? Not do that? The dude didn't show up. She was all dressed up like that. And that's kind of, you think about all these people kind of together, and they have the same kind of mentality.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That's right. It doesn't matter how big and public it is or how small and private it is. The purpose is the same.
Yeah.
Right. And when push comes to shove, and sometimes where you feel like maybe you don't quite have what it takes to push through this pressure, that internal sense of purpose, or as you and I share with Rose, our faith,
Yeah.
right? That's there for you to push you through those difficult times, that where you end up on the other side a more refined version of who you were before.
Yeah. And this is something that Rose deals with a lot because I think if she could just magically be able to help people and not have to fight, she'd probably do that.
Yeah.
But she has a gift, and she knows she has a gift, and she has this ability. And, obviously she grew up doing the martial arts, and she really does it. But she just kind of wears on her sleeve whatever most every other fighter feels. But she just is willing to talk about it. And now more fighters are now talking about it than they did before. And
I've noticed that.
Yeah,
I noticed that Anthony Smith is starting to talk, and other people are starting to become more transparent about their vulnerabilities.
I was just watching this thing with Joanna, and she was talking about how she cries and she's a very emotional. Are you kidding me? That was the thing that she was going after Rose before, but now she's like, yeah, it's just what happens. And even Justin Gaethje was saying the same thing. How now you know why I was crying when she beat Joanna. Now it's even more. Now people were making fun of me. He goes, now you know. So yeah, it's becoming. It's like you said. It's bigger than the fight. It's become. People are seeing this, going, wow, this is a real person, an authentic human being who's allowing us to get a little glimpse of the internal struggles that happen in fighting when you got to potentially go out there and get messed up.
That's right. It's you versus you, right?
Yeah, 100%.
That it's you versus you, and that's the beauty of it. You have no choice when you're dealing with a real martial art like MMA. You have no choice but to deal with yourself every single moment. It's you versus you and you versus your opponent. And the more you can get out of your own way, the more successful you'll probably be, just like in real life.
100%. Yeah. And, I was watching this thing with Dan Gable, and he was talking about he had all these who are already Olympic, world champions, multiple time NCAA champions, like 20 of them in a room. And they had the sports psychologist there, and he went around and said, what's your biggest fear? Same two, fear fatigue and fear of failure. And these guys are already the best in the world. They still had it, still dealing with it. And so he goes, okay, well, the fatigue one's a lot easier. You got fear of fatigue, put yourself in fatigue a lot so you get very comfortable with it. Feel failure. Hey, how many people have lost? They all raise their hand. All right, we done it. Now let's go on. Let's just realize this is part of the game. But the more we embrace it and we learn to deal with it, the less it's going to try to take us down. And so it's a huge thing, and that's a big thing with Rose as well, with positive affirmations and the people that are around her to be able to talk with her and keep her motivated and also deal with she might be having a little down. Okay, let's deal with this, and then let's get to training. But let's deal with this first. We're not just going to shove it under the carpet like it doesn't exist.
Nope. Because there always will be those ebbs and flows in life, right? Ebbs and flows in training, ebbs and flows in life, ups and downs with successes. And it's those people that are willing to endure those low moments to make their way back up, and just they understand that it's not a linear climb, right? The climb is up and down and up and down, but that average continues to go upward.
Yeah.
That's really great stuff. Let's talk about opera non verba. I came into the academy several years ago now, and I looked up on the wall and I see opera non verba, deeds not words. And that's always been something that's really been really important for me personally in my life. For me personally, like I pay very little attention to what people say, and I watch more closely to what people do. And then I pay very close attention to make sure what they're saying and what they're doing are congruent with one another, right? So I looked up at the wall that day and I thought, wow, I really like that, but let's find out just how real that is. I didn't know anybody there, right? I had only met you just the one time. Let's find out if they really mean it. Do they really mean opera non verba? And the more time that I've spent at the academy, I've come to realize that it permeates every single aspect of not only the culture at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, but who Greg Nelson is as a person. Would you like to share a little bit with everybody who's watching about where opera non verba came from and why that? Why opera non verba? I mean, it's right here on my hat, right? Why opera non verba as the mantra for yourself and the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy?
Yeah, the opera non verba. Way back when I first started the academy, I was kind of trying to find that one little tagline that was going to, without saying anything else, be who we are. We were about fighting. We were about training. At the beginning, it was small. It was all a bunch of fighters who just wanted to train. That's all it was. And I had a couple other friends that from around the country, and one of them was in the military, and he also has opera nonverbal, but he was an Air Force uh, uh, guy, and so when I was looking up different taglines, I saw opera nonverbal, and it came from originally a helicopter unit in Vietnam, and obviously, they were just flying into who knows whatever, and just had to go in, and there was no, I mean, it was all about deeds, not words. And they'd come back, and helicopters would be all shot up. So I'm like, man, that is about as as awesome as you can get, and as great as an example of actions and not talking about stuff. It's just like, okay, what do we need to do? Fly into a million people that are shooting at us. Okay, let's go. And so that was kind of the same mentality. I wanted to have that same thought process of deeds, not words. You don't have to talk about it. People should be able to watch what you're doing, and you don't even have to tell them what your goals are. They look at you and go, oh, this person wants to be a great fighter, not because of what they're saying, but just because of what they're doing over there. And there's another quote that I've always heard, that it was actually this, there was a Chinese lady that was a Christian, and, they're all being persecuted and everything. And people would say, yeah, she never has to speak because her actions tell you exactly what she believes and what she's doing. And she has changed so many lives by just what she's doing, not by saying a single word. And I'm like, there it is. There's another great example of it. And so for me, that has always been kind of the saying that has guided me. When push comes to shove, I'll just shut my mouth and I'm just going to get going. And that's what I want all our guys to do, because that's what's going to get the job done anyways. And so deeds, not words, opera nonverbal has been the guiding mantra of the academy since we opened.
Keeping Rose as a central part of our conversation today, I think that also, I mean, I don't think so. I know that also speaks for Rose. I think Rose would rather not speak. I think, she has no problem articulating herself, by the way. I don't want her to think that she can assert herself, or she can, and she can be talkative for sure. But I think Rose would, my opinion is, and what I know of Rose, that she would rather just go do things than have to talk about it. Not only just in fighting, but, just in life. She wants to just go work at it. She wants to cultivate things in life. And I think that that's such a great lesson that so many people can draw from her in this world that we're living in today, where it just isn't valued, where people cultivating things aren't valued like they used to be.
Yeah. 100%.
Do you have any stories or observations of Rose and how opera nonverba fits with her?
Well, I mean, just her everyday training life. There's no fanfare. She would rather. That's why, again, they like the academy, because they just can come in and just be part of the school, and people aren't like, ooh, ooh. They're just like, oh, it's Rose, cool, and they train, and everybody gets their job done, and that's something that they totally love, because then they don't have to do all the pictures and do all the stuff. And that's kind of been a theme, because Sean Shirk was the same way. He goes, listen, if you want me to put on a clown nose and do cartwheels, I'm not going to do it. He just goes, why can't we you can film me training, and then I'll go fight, and that'll be good enough. That should say everything. And he didn't want to do any of that stuff. I remember in Vegas, he would find every way he could to find the service elevators, walk outside and go around the buildings so we wouldn't have to go through the buildings, because he just wanted to get to where we were training and get back and not talk to anybody. And that would be perfect for him. And that's kind of been the theme from the get-go. And so Rose just carries that on. And Dave Benet was definitely like that. Didn't talk a lot, just trained all the time. And, Coach Nat, all these guys, same way. They just train. They have all these, belts and medals and trophies. You're never going to hear it.
a lot of the success comes from the things that you do that people never see. Because
Yeah.
I know Rose does a lion's share of her training and practice right at home in her own garage.
Yeah.
She and Pat,
The
she and
Rojo.
Pat just there alone. There's no cameras rolling. There's no fans. There's no fanfare going on. It's just them in their garage just grinding it out.
Yep.
You
And
know,
we trained that.
even some people, from the academy, right? When COVID hit, I know some of those guys for sure. I know from personal experience that they still found a way to get together in a private place where there's no fanfare going on to
Yeah.
continue to put the time in. And because one, they love to do it. It was not a chore. It's not a chore for them. I mean, sometimes it is. It's not a chore for them. It's just what they're born to do. It's what's in their DNA. And I think that, I mean, my observation is, anyway, I don't know if you would agree with this, is that, like, I think you were sort of talking about this earlier. That's just one of those reoccurring themes with those outliers, is that they can't not do what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't matter, during the whole thing when we were closed down, you know, we were like, okay, how are we going to train? Okay, we got to do the Zoom thing. And I'll tell you this, I probably did more training because now I got to
Yeah,
do Nat's class. I got to do Matt's
yeah,
class. I got to do Andy's class, and then for me, I was like, okay, I got all these people looking at me. So I got to do everything as perfect as
yeah,
possible. So I feel that my technical skill went up another level because now I was so focused on doing everything so exact. And of course, we still had people that were, because the UFC didn't shut down. We were still fighting. So therefore we had to train. So we had our small group that came together and we trained, and there was no fanfare. There's nobody around. We couldn't, but they're professional athletes. They got to get ready for these fights. And so we trained, and we got small groups that we needed to get, because we had to also watch out because we couldn't let anybody come in because you're getting tested all the time. So when you go out there, if you have anything that says you might have been exposed to COVID, you're not fighting. So we had to be
yeah,
very particular with who, and everybody in that
yeah,
group.
yeah.
They were very, very smart about it. Nobody got it. Nobody dealt with it. And if they got something, they didn't come in and they told everybody. I mean, it was a very professional thing back and forth, but nobody knew. Just our little group. It's kind of how it's been.
So we're at an hour. We're gonna start to wind things down here a little bit. But what what do you want to leave everybody with? Like, what is your overarching message for people who are watching this about anything at all, whether it be fighting, whether it be life, it doesn't matter. If there was one message that Greg Nelson could share with the world in this moment in his life, what would it be?
My biggest thing is that, you've heard it before, but enjoy the struggle.
Mm,
Embrace the fight. I mean, to me, it's everything's a journey, and what's going to happen in the journey, you look at it for how can I take this, whatever it is, good, bad, or ugly, and how can I learn from it, grow from it? How can I become a better person from it? So I'm always about embracing those challenges and finding, and that's pretty much what we do. We're trying to find ways to make things harder and more of a struggle. And why does this work? Well, let's figure it out by making it harder and then breaking it down from there. I mean, it's just embracing the struggle, embracing that, and actually one of the things I like is honor the struggle. Honor it. Man, this is a great thing. We get to do it. And I'll tell you this, I've been in a situation where everything was taken away. Everything was taken away. So to have a day where things aren't going great is a freaking awesome day, because you get to make mistakes and you get to try to figure out things, and you have to try to work your way through a problem or a struggle or a challenge. When all that stuff is taken away from you, you start to realize, man, all those struggles, all those challenges, all those, different things that seem to get in our way are actually there to make us better, to give us more strength, to refine us as people.
amen. Thanks a lot, Coach. You
Yes.
know, I'm really super blessed to have a life where I have people in my life and in my world who inspire me, and I get to be in awe all the time and feel and so grateful and blessed every moment that I get with all the people in my life, and you're one of those people, Greg. Thank you
Vice
so
versa.
much. Thanks for coming on tonight, and we will see you tomorrow night. Thanks, Greg.
Awesome. Thank you.